What did I tell you yesterday was my favorite definition of planned giving?
Ooh, good death. A good death.
Yeah, good death, that's right.
Yeah, we talked about that last night.
Oh, you talked about good death?
Yeah, as preachers, we could relate to that. If they would just get out of our hair, then we'd have a better pastor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just sometimes it only takes a few funerals to kind of clear the situation. A lot of people think that that planned giving is deferred giving, but there are some planned gifts that mean money now. A charitable lead trust or things like gifts of stock, that's money now. So this is just for me, but this has been a helpful definition. A planned gift is a tax-wise way of giving. That's the first thing. So that means it's going to help the donor. The donor can give, by definition, more for less. Tax-wise way of giving. That typically involves a third person, like a broker, a lawyer, a life insurance agent, something along those lines. And it typically requires some type of instrument. Now, with that definition, would cash be a planned gift?
No.
Because it's tax-wise, but it doesn't require a third person. But a lot of people would still throw cash into planned giving because it is tax savings. You get the deduction. So anyway, but I've never seen a silver bullet definition. But I keep coming back to mine, as something somewhat satisfying. Okay, and insofar as investment and return, planned giving is where you really have really good cost to raise a dollar figures. Okay, so that's what we're moving people toward, is acquiring them, retaining them, upgrading them, and a lot of times that is done through planned or tax-wise ways of giving. You want to, for your organization, you want a capital campaign about every 7 years or something like that to make the numbers work for you, and to have your annual giving, which is a higher cost to raise a dollar typically, to make that pay off. You need to move people up the scales, and capital campaigns, planned giving, legacy giving as well is how to move people up. Let me talk to you a little bit about the difference between a consultant and legal counsel. A lot of times organizations hire someone like a Calder who has this expertise, depth of expertise in dealing with the most complex of families, which is a whole other issue. But typically, Calder's going to represent the institution to the donor and suggest tax-wise ways of giving, creative ways to give more for less. But that donor is going to need a legal or an accounting person representing him or her, because otherwise there would be a conflict of interest. So typically, there's somebody representing creative tax-wise ways to the donor, and the donor having a legal accountant to represent him or her. Okay.
Rob, quick question on that.
Yeah.
So it wouldn't be as clean then if we just have one of our donors talk to the Methodist Foundation. I guess that foundation person is a liaison more for us than the donor.
I would say that that person is probably representing the interest of the institution. Yeah. Now, there are such things as honest brokers. There really are.
They're out there, yeah.
Yeah. But by definition, by the tried and true ways,
Okay.
You want to at least let the donor be aware
Sure.
that best case scenario is you have your own person. And if they release that, what do? You know, it's
Yeah.
ultimately they're responsible for themselves.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. Let me tell you what I think is a good way if you're thinking about jump-starting a planned giving program. I think it's a good thing to have just a way to get it going, is to have a time frame of a year or two and call it a charter membership, way to recognize people. If you're starting it, just say for the next 2 years, any planned gift that comes in, we're going to make you a member of the Charter Member Society. And it's just a way to incentivize people to jump in. Okay. We did not have a planned giving program at the cathedral in the early 90s, and I was on the chapter or the governing body, and we established the Arbor Society. And it was Daniel Elton Trueblood who said, "Blessed is the one who plants a shade tree under whose shade he or she will never sit." And so that was kind of the invitation for people to give, leave something in their will, and they won't benefit from the money, but they're planting a shade tree. Okay, so and I was a member. It was really quick because I was on the governing body. They went to us first to ask us to have 100% participation in the Arbor Society, and it was just as easy enough for me to make a phone call to my life insurance broker, just to say, okay, the first $5,000 when I'm dead goes to the cathedral, everything else goes to the beneficiaries. And it was really no muss, no fuss. So, it doesn't have to take a lot of time and energy and angst. It was just a simple phone call.
You can break it up like that. I always thought you had to say, send my life insurance to this person, but it can be the first 5,000.
The first 5,000, first fruits kind of deal. So, but anyway, that's just to let you know how simple it can be to kind of get these things going. I was a member of the Arbor Society. They misspelled my name on the tree with my leaf, but there you go. But anyway, because if I had given 10,000, maybe they probably got me, or paid to have changed the little leaf. But anyway.
That was their boy.
Yeah, exactly. Let me tell you, 90% of planned gifts, about 85–90%, comes from death time transfers, okay? And so on page 58 in your manual, you can have, very simple, just say, I want to leave, in your will, right, I want $5,000 to go to this charity. That's an outright bequest, okay? And then a residual bequest is another type of bequest. It's a remainder. After these things are done first, the remainder goes to the charity. So that's another form of another dynamic within wills. And then if there's a contingent bequest, that's kind of, if this happens, then this happens, okay? And then life income plans where you leave X amount from the will and put it in some kind of a plan where derivative income goes to charity. And a codicil is just an easy amendment. Let's say you paid a lot of money for a will and you don't want to have to go through some arduous process, you can ask your attorney to create a codicil, which is an amendment to a will, and it's just a simple kind of an overlay. Okay. Another plan gift that I really like is called the Charitable Lead Trust. Again, this is not a deferred gift. This is money now to the organization. This is the beautiful thing. Let's just say, here's your universe, a donor's universe of a portfolio. Let's just say that, you know, some people do have money, have more money than they need to live on. They just do. So what a charitable lead trust allows is a way for you to carve out. Now, charitable lead trust, here's kind of a typically it's people who have assets over 10 million. I mean, that there's a tipping point of where this works and kind of doesn't work. But typically it's asset values over 10 million. This person has more money than he or she needs to live on. And they have charitable intent, but they're concerned about their rightful heirs. And, you know, they don't want to give money away to charity and cut out their children and grandchildren. So what they'll do is kind of slice out a piece of their portfolio and put this in a charitable lead trust. And the derivative income will go to the charity for X number of years, and you get deductions and things like that. And then after a generation or two, this money goes back into the estate, and it won't be hit with estate taxes. What is the threshold now? Is it 5 million, above which?
I think it's like 5.14.
Yeah. Above which, below which you're not going to have estate taxes. But if you died, you have more than that, you're going to be hit. So a lot of rich people, you know, want to minimize their, you know, use every trick in the book to bypass the estate taxes. You know, either your inheritance can have it or Uncle Sam can have it.
So even though this piece of the pie ends up back into the corpus, it's not counted as an estate transfer?
No. Well, it's a tax advantage. You skirt.
You could exclude it from the taxable
Yeah.
amount. All right.
Yeah. So.
And that gift could be 10, 20 years to the donor's preference.
Yeah, it could be, and of course, the more time and more money going to the organization, the more tax advantage it's going to be when it goes back to the rightful heirs, things like that. So again, I thought that was a pretty kind of creative thing. Okay. Another instrument would be a gift of life insurance. Let's just say, for example, parents have a child, and they want that child to go to college, and the income earners are concerned that if one or both die, that child won't be able to go to college. So they're going to buy a life insurance policy in such a way that if they do die, the life insurance will pay off and that child will have money to go to college. Okay, so that's kind of a defensive, you know, way to ensure your child's education. But let's just say you don't die, and you have this insurance policy that's loaded for the child's education, and you're able to, you know, put the child through college. So you've got this policy there that's not used for the purpose that it was intended. And so over time, that policy, this whole life, universal life, is going to build up cash value. So a lot of times, a donor will want to give that policy to the nonprofit, okay? And to do that and to benefit from the advantages, the nonprofit has to become both the owner of the policy and the beneficiary, not one or the other. It is both the beneficiary and the owner of the policy. You surrender control. You surrender the cash value. Now, what are some of the choices that the charity has? The charity can just kind of let the policy go and take the cash value, okay? Or they can load and keep the policy whole, keep the policy alive such that at the person's death, they get a huge death benefit. Now, sometimes donors will give the policy to the organization, where the organization becomes the owner and beneficiary, and the donor will pay the payments to keep the policy whole. So they'll pay back to the organization and get a tax deduction for their income, income tax deduction for their gift to the charity to keep their policy whole. So that upon their death, they'll have this windfall benefit, okay? So that's another way. It's just something, in your conversations with donors, if you start hearing these things that, I have a couple of insurance policies, this is, you'll want to think about, okay, I may be able to parlay that into a gift to the organization.
And this may be a Thursday, Friday question too, but so I guess I don't fully understand on a whole life policy, what if I just make the nonprofit the beneficiary but not the owner?
Well, that means that if you're the owner, you can change the beneficiary.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
It's certainly revocable.
Yeah, it is revocable, and usually when the difference between tax advantage and not would be if it's revocable, you tend to lose tax advantages. If you surrender and make things irrevocable and you surrender control, that's when the tax advantages go your way. That's my understanding.